begin. So we're going to start off. I'd just like to thank everyone for participating in our Cut Sugar Challenge and for your continued support of Sound. I am super excited to welcome our guest of honor today, Dr. Christian Gonzalez, also known as Dr. G, who in my opinion is one of the most genuine, authentic humans doing purpose-driven work that I've had the pleasure of getting to know and feel honored to call a dear friend and brother. Dr. G earned his Doctorate of Naturopathic Medicine in 2014. He believes that the relationships we have with our home, the environment, and the people in our lives all play a role in the development of chronic disease. Through different avenues, Dr. G empowers people with the knowledge and the courage to take their health into their own hands. Dr. G, thank you for doing that and for your continued work and just everything you share with the world. We are so appreciative.
You know, what a pleasure it is to be on this with one, a friend, and two, a company that I really believe in, who's really putting educational material out for the people, right? And it's not just sell product and, you know, profit, but it's put something good out to the people. And also let's educate them. And, you know, that's the name of my game, man. You put me on a small box in the back alley with 5 people, and I'll just keep talking about the things I'm passionate about until everyone starts going like this, you know?
Love it, love it. Well, let's dive right into that. And I guess the first question that we got for you is, would you mind high level breaking down the different classes of non-sugar sweeteners, artificial versus natural?
Yeah, I get this question. I get this question a lot because they're like, what do you think of blank, this sweetener or this sweetener? So I like that you ask classes, because there's differences in sweeteners and they behave differently in their classes, right? So the chemical or synthetically derived sweeteners are like aspartame. You know, when you go to a diner and you'll see it right next to the coffee that they give you, those little packets, that's equal NutraSweet. Whereas you'll see sucralose, Splenda, that's also in the little packet. And then saccharin, which is sweet and low. So those are the ones that I like to think of like the diner sweeteners, right? And we'll go back to those because there is more controversy around those. And I'll tell you pretty much scientifically where we see artificial sweeteners or chemically derived sweeteners, right? So they're man-made, they're from a lab. Then we have the more natural ones that are derived from nature, the ones that come from the one that comes from the stevia leaf, stevia, and monk fruit, right? Those are the ones we know. And then there's sugar alcohols like mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol. Those can be derived from fruits and vegetables, but they also can be made in a lab. Most of the time they're made in a lab, right? Unless it's an organic product that you're buying, or, you know, we have our favorite spot here, Air One. They use naturally derived ones when they put it into their smoothies, for example. None of the classes are perfect. Some are better than others. But I'm definitely wanting to talk about, you know, some of my choices and things to watch out for.
Totally. Well, so let's go in a little bit into the artificial ones, the class that you talked about, and what would you say are your top ones to stay away from and why? Like, how would that impact potentially your health and the reason behind it?
Well, you have to ask yourself the question of why you're consuming artificial sweeteners, right? If it's for weight loss or you have diabetes, it's likely that you've heard of, you know, Sweet and Low, Splenda, Equal, the ones that we were talking about. And initially, when they first came out, it was right around the 90s, there was a little bit of controversy as to their byproducts that we're breaking down to, and then more and more controversy. And when I got out of school, a lot of people were talking about it because some of all of them create byproducts that break down into one of the byproducts of the byproduct is formaldehyde, which we know is a known carcinogen. But the breakdown product is much smaller than, you know, we naturally create. So that was the first part of the controversy. The more legitimate part of the controversy behind them is that they affect your gut microbiome. There's emerging evidence, and it's actually concerning, that when you're consuming artificial synthetic sweeteners, they're actually creating a shift in your gut bacteria, where the usual beneficial gut bacteria are now becoming pathogenic. And that shift in the gut bacteria has a lot of implications and consequences for your health, right? particularly because it can be counterproductive to what you want to do with these artificial sweeteners. When it comes to our gut bacteria, they play a major role in blood sugar regulation, in hormone signaling, particularly hormones like leptin, right, which is suppressing our hunger. So if those are shifting, then we are very much so at risk if we're consuming these for it to do the opposite effect of what we want it to. And we see that. I remember when I did a show, his name is Dr. Michael Goran, and he wrote Sugar Proof. And he was talking about all things sugar, especially in the context of kids consuming sugar. And I asked him a question about artificial sweeteners, and he goes, we were concerned about cancer and less concerned, but the biggest concern is overeating. People are drinking artificial sweeteners. Let's say I'm having a meal at a diner, right? And I'm sweetening my lemonade with it, right? When I have my next meal, it's more likely than not that I'm going to consume more calories, even though I'm drinking, I'm having less calories by the non-caloric 0-calorie sweeteners. It's creating a signaling cascade in my body that is tricking it. You can't trick the body like that because there's consequences, cause and effect. So that's my take on artificial sweeteners. I much prefer the other ones that I was talking about, especially if you're taking them because you want to lose weight or you have blood sugar issues. I didn't mention there is some emerging data also on artificial sweeteners that they impair glucose tolerance and glucose sensitivity, right? There was an Israeli study of 380 plus men and women, and they saw that people's glucose sensitivity went down, right? So all of a sudden their insulin isn't working as well. And they have an increase in glucose related ailments like prediabetes and diabetes. So again, I don't know if these artificial sweeteners are working the way that they were intended to in the 90s or marketed as.
Wow. A lot of information. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess let's go to the other class of natural sweeteners. And what would you say is the most important thing to keep in mind when choosing a natural sweetener, like a stevia, like for example, liquid stevia versus powdered stevia, or monk fruit?
It has to be 100%, both of them. You want to see 100% pure stevia, 100% pure monk fruit. In liquid form, for it to be shelf stable, because it's not its original form, it usually needs some sort of stabilizers or chemical stabilizers. So you'll see a lot of the liquid stevias have a few more ingredients, but also, and more so for stevia. Monk fruit is a little bit different because there's not that many brands of monk fruit out there. But the stevia is there's 300 plus brands of stevia. Now, you and I, we get in the car and we drive to Walmart, probably every stevia we find is going to be crappy. And it'll say stevia and it'll say low calorie sweetener, lose weight. And then we look in the back and it's not only stevia, it's like sodium benzoate, right? We have different stabilizers, different gums, right? And maybe even food coloring to make it nice for a kid's eyes or something. But that's a problem. Stevia has become more adulterated than monk fruit. Monk fruit still should be 100%. Both should be powders always. And you shouldn't overdo them. The thing with stevia is there's no real data that it shifts the gut microbiome like the artificial sweeteners, but it may be implicated in reducing the communication between gut microbes. So it may have an effect on our gut microbiome. We don't know yet. So at the end of the day, I actually recommend monk fruit out of all of the sweeteners because there's no real evidence that it does anything to the gut microbiome.
Wow. Yeah, fascinating. And I tend to prefer monk fruit as well. And it's interesting, on a trip to Peru I had stevia down there in its plant form, mixed and very natural, and totally different experience with it and how my body reacted to it than getting it up here. And I think that speaks to what you were talking about, just the process and kind of how in America we overheat, overtreat, mass produce, add gums, add stabilizers. And yeah.
That's what we do, man. We want to sell, but it's true in its whole form. It's found in nature. There's a reason it's found in nature as such, I was always fascinated. One of the greatest things I've ever learned was where aspirin comes from, Salix alba. One of the constituents is salicin, and that's white willow bark, right? So white willow bark and aspirin are different. When you extract the isolate and use it as a pill or pain reliever or fever reducer, whatever it is, it causes distress in the stomach. It causes inflammation in the stomach. But when you consume white willow bark, it not only has that isolate in it, but the summation of chemicals are also protecting your gut. Isn't that crazy? It protects your stomach. So it coats your stomach while the ingredient is doing its mechanism of action to reduce fever, reduce pain. So it's a pretty incredible process when you think about the intelligence of nature and the ego of man. When we take those extracts and go, let's take this one extract because we know that it does its job therapeutically. Let's make money on it. Whereas nature always knows how to design everything. So that's probably your experience with the stevia when you went.
Absolutely, and I'm mind blown about that in aspirin. I did not know that, and it is beautiful how Mother Nature really knows what it's doing, and intelligence that can't be seen. Question for you: you mentioned that you would always prefer powdered over liquid. Just curious, why? Does that have to do with the process of getting it into the liquid and usually adding things, or is there another reason?
Yeah, because it's not its stable form, right? If you take a leaf like stevia and you grind it up, you can make it into a powder, and that'll be stable. When you put it into a liquid, it needs other ingredients to keep it at a liquid at room temperature.
Makes total sense. Makes total sense. Awesome.
But you listen, they might have created pure 100% stevia in liquid form, and I don't know about it. And if they did, great.
Yeah, no, I have not seen it. Maybe they did. Who knows? Got a question actually from my mom. What about erythritol, swerve, and allulose?
It's a good question. So allulose is a food sweetener too. I don't know enough about allulose, to be honest, but I do know when it comes to mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol, erythritol, they don't have an effect on the glycemic index, so they won't raise your blood sugar. But if you use too much, very quickly it can affect your digestive system, causing bloating, diarrhea for some people, heartburn for some people, i.e. me. I got to take xylitol out of everything, and erythritol is the worst for me. It's the worst sweetener for my body. I really don't react well. So I would always say that's the caveat when you take sweeteners or sugar alcohols, is that you make sure that your body can take it. And also I mentioned that it can be synthetic or coming from fruits and vegetables. Ask the company or ask whoever's using it what brand they're using to make sure that you're getting the natural derived.
Great answer. And we're gonna open up the floor. I know we don't got much more time with you, but if anybody else has questions, please feel free to share. And yeah, this has been great. I learned some new things too. Thank you, G. Always dropping those knowledge bombs. And in the meantime, actually tell the audience listening how they can learn and hear more about you, what platforms you have, and where are you sharing all your knowledge bombs.
Yeah, great. Website's docgonzalez.com. My Instagram is dr.gonzalez with a Z at the end. And my podcast is Heal Thyself. That's where I put all the information out. Those are my platforms.
And if you have not listened to the Heal Thyself podcast, I cannot recommend it enough. Always has some incredible guests, and knowledge bombs is what he calls them, and they truly are. We got some more questions coming in. When a sweetener alternative is just an item in the list of ingredients, how do you know it's 100% swerve or stevia or whatever alternative?
When it's on the ingredients and it says alternative sweetener, does it say it in the ingredients? Because it should say stevia, monk fruit, xylitol. It should mention the one in the ingredients.
Yes, so I think the question comes from like, okay, you have a bar and it has a bunch of ingredients and then it has stevia in it. How do you know that's 100% stevia versus like, a derivative?
For sure. You call the company, man. Like, this is what I say. If you're going to be consuming it every single day, like it's your favorite bar for work, it's your favorite snack bar in the middle of the day, call the company and say, hey, I love your bars. Everything looks good to me in my book, but what is the form of stevia you use? What is the brand of stevia you use? Then you can type it up and see, okay, wow, they use this brand of stevia, but it's not just stevia. There's 5 other things in it. What the hell? It only says stevia on the list. So you should ask, because in my experience, most companies will find a way to cut corners So you got to do your best by your body, especially if it's an everyday food.
And well said. I would have the same hunch as you, just being in the industry and producing sound. And like for us, natural flavors is a word that is in every beverage, but allows companies to kind of hide some other stuff that are in it. So yeah, calling the company and finding out is definitely the best. Another question, thoughts on using maple syrup or honey as sweeteners, 100% organic?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a healthy diet and you're not eating like crap and you work out and you move, then the glycemic spike, your insulin spike from those, because honey will raise your insulin. What was the other one? Agave will raise your insulin.
Maple
But
syrup.
maple syrup, it'll raise your insulin. But in small amounts, I never mind it. I mean, like when I make my cacao, I'll put a little bit of maple syrup, and I don't really think twice about it. Whereas sometimes when I make my coffee, I'll put monk fruit. If you're a healthy person without prediabetes or elevated insulin, then it should be okay.
Awesome. Here's a good question. Seems like monk fruit usually gives me digestive discomfort like 5 hours after I eat it. Any idea what's going on there?
Yeah, monk fruit is metabolized not in the small intestine, but in the colon by the gut bacteria. So it's likely that it's two things. It could be individually your gut bacteria. You can have a healthy gut bacteria, and individually what your healthy looks like just doesn't like monk fruit. Or you can have a imbalanced gut bacteria in your colon. And when it's metabolized, it's causing bloating and digestive distress. It depends. If the person asking the question has gastrointestinal issues, other ones like constipation, diarrhea, bloating, heartburn, things like that, then that would just lend to show you that you may have some digestive dysbiosis and imbalance. So it's a question by question.
Totally. And they had a follow-up question: which sweeteners are allowed by the FDA to sneak through under the guide of natural flavors? Which I don't think a sweetener is classified as a natural flavor. I can answer that. Yeah, it would have to be its own thing. There are natural flavors. What could go under that umbrella is like grapefruit flavor, peach flavor, some extracts, some essences, some alcohols. A lot of alcohols can go under a natural flavor, but a sweetener needs to be its own thing on an ingredient panel, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different umbrella.
Totally. That looks like all the questions. Oh, I read that they recently changed things to allow. I read that the FDA recently changed things to allow some forms of stevia. Don't know.
No, I would just go by like the part. I would go by the stevia being 100% pure, and that would be like kind of like your gold standard.
Oh, got it. And I see they kind of recently, or they corrected it. They're saying that they read that the FDA recently changed things to allow certain forms of stevia under the natural flavors.
Under natural flavors. Yeah.
Would not surprise me if that's the case. I don't know that to be the case, and that could get very dangerous.
Yeah, let's check up on that.
Yeah,
both of us for my own education and sound.
And then another question here: what about coconut sugar?
Coconut sugar will also raise your insulin. It's, in my opinion, going to be better than white processed bleached flour. Bleached sugar. Again, it depends. It goes back to like the honey, the maple syrup, the agave. It depends on you as a person, right? Like, are you fit? Are you healthy? Do you move? Right? How's your blood sugar? Do you eat vegetables throughout the day and fiber throughout the day? Are you balancing your blood sugar? Or you got to think of the whole person, because if someone has a crappy inflammatory diet and then I'm adding coconut sugar into my really crappy coffee, with whole conventional milk or something, then it's a problem.
Totally. And I would agree to you. For me, when I consume those things in moderation, it's usually after a meal as well, because you don't get as much of a blood sugar spike and a raise. And it looks
Good
like the
point.
person, yeah, it looks like the person who was asking about that sent us the link in here. So we'll be sure to share that about the stevia. Gee, I know you were tight on time, so appreciate you taking this time, dropping all these knowledge bombs with everybody. There are some great questions here. Everybody knows how to find you. Also, everybody listening, this webinar and all our webinars in the Cut Sugar Challenge are recorded. They'll go out at the end of the week. So tomorrow, it's Thursday already. You could find this and all the others tomorrow. And thank you everybody for attending, listening. Dr. G, thank you for everything as always. Look forward to seeing you soon. Everybody have a great rest of your evening and night. Cheers.
All right. Take care, everyone.